access global conventions, conferences, and meetings. SMR Passport.
Sponsored by Westmoreland Flint, IQ Communications, and Roddymaker, Sewell.
Magnus Eriksson is chairman and co-founder of the Raw Materials Group, an independent group of mineral economists and mineral strategy policy analysts. Mr. Eriksson is a keynote speaker at the Mining Indaba International Summit in Cape Town, South Africa. Mr. Eriksson speaks to SMR Passport from his office in Solna, Sweden. Thank you and welcome, Mr. Eriksson. Can you give any insight to your keynote presentation on iron ore and mergers and acquisition?
On the mergers and acquisitions, what I will discuss is that we have seen a decline in M&A activity, which is only to be expected because M&A activity is very much linked to price increases or decreases, and prices did go down slightly 2009, and so that we have seen a peak. But I think that 2010 is really the year to make acquisitions, and it's still prices for mining companies and deposits haven't risen that much. I think there are many excellent opportunities. We will also discuss how both Chinese and Indian companies are intensifying their search for suitable deposits, suitable companies, and although last year the Chinese were rebutted when they tried to take over Rio Tinto, I still think that it's only a matter of time until we will see a major Chinese takeover and a Chinese mining company appear among the top 10 globally.
Where do you anticipate the greatest change in production levels from 2009 to 2010?
Well, I think that we will see great changes in China, and I think that the long and strong boom in China is partly over. We looked at production figures for China, and they have really peaked. They've been more or less constant for 3 years, while we have seen how imports have gone up. So I think that we shall see possibly even a decline, and actually I think that we have seen a decline measured in Fe content in China already. Otherwise, I think that Australia will speed up, and Fortescue and others will work very hard and get their projects going. And possibly another very important and growth node is South Africa. In India, I don't see very big increases. I think that there will be a little slowdown in growth in India.
Will China and Australia continue to deepen their ties? And if so, what role will they play on the global stage?
I agree with you that China will become more reliant on Australian iron ore and other exports. But at the same time, I see some unresolved issues between the two countries. The Chinese really don't like being at the mercy of some of the majors, and particularly now when BHP and BHP Billiton and Rio have joined their operations in iron ore. I think that is something which the Chinese are really worried about, and as you know, the actions that the Chinese took about some of the Rio Tinto co-workers is still up and running, those court cases, and somehow I think that there is a lot of work to be done before the relation between the Chinese and Australians are really amicable. And I'm not sure how this will pan out, but I think it's more complicated than just increasing the imports. The Chinese will demand some sort of reasonable influence over price formation, and that goes particularly for iron ore and coal.
How will North America iron ore producers fare in 2010?
I think they will have some problems because the pickup again after the crisis will be very slow in North America. It will be slow also in Europe for that matter. So there will be a slow return to a normal situation, so to say. And might actually be that the most difficult part of the world is North America. The deposits of iron ore deposits of North America, US in particular, is low grade, and they are landlocked, as you know. In Canada, I think that it will be a little easier, but I am also a bit hesitant about how many of the new projects in Canada will really go ahead. I think some of them got a bit hurt by the price fall in 2009, and they are far up in the north. They have large investment costs, and they have also high operating costs. So some of them might go ahead, but I think also that at a slower pace than anticipated only a year ago.
What are the most significant changes that you anticipate in production in 2010 among countries and the leading iron ore producers?
Probably a bit more conservative than many observers, and we don't believe in a very high increase in 2010. It will be somewhere in the neighborhood 10-15% as far as we see the market developing right now.
And finally, what is your prediction for how iron ore prices will be set in 2015 and beyond?
We think we will see a return to market demand situation like before the financial crisis in 2011, 2012, something like that, and we think that the prices will increase slowly, but in the long run, the major producers will really manage supply, additional supply. I mean, Vale, BHP, Billiton, and Rio will manage the new mines coming on stream at such a pace that we won't see a decline in prices, but I don't think we will see very strong increases either. It will be a more calm period, let's say the next 5 years, than what we've seen in the recent 5 years. Chinese producers will act as swing producers when prices are a little higher and transport costs are high. That will protect the Chinese, and then they can produce a little more. When freight rates go down and possibly benchmark prices and steel demand is a little lower, then they will close their operations.
Access global conventions, conferences, and meetings. SMR Passport.
Sponsored by Westmoreland Flint, IQ Communications, and Roddy Maker, Sewell.